I was reborn, and the first thing I did was pull the plug on my comatose husband, Jack, while he was lying in the hospital bed. Why bother trying to save him? To bring him back so he could keep a mistress abuse me and push me to depression and suicide? The new me was called Avenger Betty. Who told you to pull the plug? Jack's mother, Ruby, stormed into the hospital room furious. Too bad for her, she was a step too late. I'd already signed the consent form to stop treatment and had personally removed the oxygen tube from Jack. Jack had a major car accident yesterday. After the accident, the doctor declared him brain dead. But somehow 6 months later, Jack miraculously woke up, proving that the saying bad people live for 1,000 years was true. At that time, I didn't know he had a mistress or that he crashed while buying her a Valentine's Day gift. So after hearing about his accident, I was devastated. I poured all our savings into his treatment, even taking a huge loan. I swallowed my pride, borrowed money from relatives, brought him nutritious porridge to the hospital daily, massaged him and talked to him. Who would have thought that the first thing Jack would do when he woke up was to ask for a divorce? He said experiencing life and death made him realize life is short, and he didn't want to suppress himself anymore. He wanted to pursue true love. I couldn't take the blow but couldn't stop his domestic violence or his disgusting actions with his mistress. Humiliated, I agreed to the divorce. Jack promised at the divorce that he'd take care of the debt from his treatment. But after the divorce, he turned on me, saying the debt was mine to pay since I borrowed it. The torment from Jack and his mistress left me eager to end things quickly. So, I didn't scrutinize the divorce agreement, naively thinking nobody could be that shameless. But in the end, all that debt fell on me. Jack always listened to his mom, Ruby. The house we lived in was in her name, and most of his salary went to her. I got nothing in the divorce and had no means to repay the debt. As soon as my relatives heard about my divorce, they came knocking for their money back. Some of the loans were co-signed by my parents, and the relatives hounded them. Every day, a horde demanded repayment. My mom had high blood pressure and was hospitalized several times after getting too agitated. Dad, feeling humiliated around relatives, became super irritable. Once, in a fit of anger, he tried to attack Jack with a knife but got arrested instead, held in custody for 15 days. Our family was in shambles, chaotic and miserable. I was powerless against the situation, spent each day crying, developed severe depression, and less than a year after the divorce, I jumped to my death. Then, I was unexpectedly reborn to the day after Jack's accident. Jack was still fighting for his life, and it was the exact time when money was most needed. Last time it was today I took on that massive debt for him. This time, of course, I was abandoning treatment. I watched coldly as the numbers on Jack's heart monitor returned to 0. Revenge felt unexpectedly satisfying. Ruby couldn't believe it as she gawked at lifeless Jack and broke down sobbing, "My son, how could you die? How could you leave your mother alone in this world?" Soon after her cries, she came at me with claws bared. I sidestepped her assault easily. "Betty, who do you think you are to give up on my son's treatment? Who do you think you are? Now that he's gone, you owe me, my son, you owe me." Ruby raged like a madwoman. "Did I give up? Mom, wasn't it you who gave up?"
He left coldly here.
"What nonsense, why would I give up on my son? He's my only son. I could never give up on him. You killed him. You told me yesterday that you couldn't come up with the money to save Jack. Today, I reluctantly signed to give up treatment." I spoke indifferently. Ruby's face turned ghostly pale. She thought she could manipulate me, sure that even if she refused to pay, I'd find a way to save Jack. She encouraged me to borrow from relatives, claiming none of hers would help her. But her perfect plot was foiled because I suddenly refused to play by the rules. You. Ruby was left sputtering, unable to form a complete sentence. "The real person responsible for Jack's death was you, Mom. Over the years, most of Jack's earnings went to you. He was in trouble, yet you wouldn't help. If Jack should hate anyone, it should be you," I sarcastically retorted. Finishing, I had no time to waste. There was a lot to settle, like Jack and my remaining assets, insurance compensation, and where Jack's money for his mistress went. It all needed sorting out. I left straight away. I wasn't gonna bother with Jack's funeral. Grieving for a man like him was a waste. When I got home, I let the renovation company take all the valuable furniture and smashed all the immovable decor. The house wasn't mine, but the renovations inside were paid by my parents. No way was I gonna let someone else enjoy them. Once done, I headed back to my place. My parents didn't understand why I was acting like this. They thought with Jack dead I should be upset, but I felt perfectly fine, in fact quite happy. I couldn't explain much to them, only promised I wasn't ungrateful. My parents had my back no matter what. Even in my last life, when Jack's family and our relatives drove us to despair, they never blamed me. Thinking of the humiliation my parents suffered because of Jack and his family, my hatred burned even deeper. Jack didn't cause all the suffering alone. There was also Ruby and Jack's mistress, Lillian. I won't let any of them off the hook. Early the next day, Ruby kept calling me like a madwoman. After dozens of calls, I finally picked up casually. "Betty, you bitch. Are you dead? Why haven't you answered the phone?" Ruby's shrill voice screamed from the other end. "Dead? That would be your son. Remember? You." Ruby was furious, spitting out blood. "What happened to the stuff in the house? Why's the place trashed? Did you do it or not? That was mine and Jack's home. Now that Jack's gone, I decide what to do with the stuff. It's none of your business. The house is under my name. That means it's my home. What's it got to do with you? Remember, I let you live there out of my kindness," Ruby stated self-righteously. I actually laughed out loud. Sure, Ruby bought the house outright, but at least half of that money came from wages Jack handed over to her when we were dating. We never married, so Jack's money wasn't legally mine. But Ruby refused to give a dowry, claiming she was broke after buying that house. My parents only have one daughter, me. They've always doted on me. They didn't want any drama over dowry, so they agreed not to take any and even offered to pay for our home renovations. At the time, Ruby kept saying that the house belonged to me and Jack. She insisted she only had her name on it, but the usage rights were all ours. We could live in it, rent it out, or sell it. I was young and naive, blindly trusting Jack and his mother. They played me for a fool. I took a deep breath, trying to control my emotions. Getting upset over people like that, depressing myself, it's just not worth it. I don't care about the house. You can stay in it until you die, I said coldly. Knowing Ruby's nature, there was no way I'd get any part of that house, so I didn't want to waste time fighting over it. Holding on to cold, lifeless property with no one to care for you or inherit it, that's the real tragedy of life. Are you cursing me? Ruby questioned me, all riled up. I ignored her and continued. The renovations were paid for by my family, and we bought all the appliances and furniture. Isn't it fair for me to take them when I leave? Betty, you ungrateful witch, don't you have a conscience? I paid for that house. Now that my son's in trouble, you're turning your back on us? Aren't you afraid of getting struck by lightning? Nope, 'cause the one who might get struck isn't me. Some people already got their comeuppance, didn't they? I retorted sarcastically. What did you say? Are you saying my son's death was payback? Shouldn't you already know? Listen here, Betty. My son's dead and you won't have a good life either. Ruby abruptly hung up. I looked at my phone and chuckled coldly. Who's scared of who now? I'd be worried if she didn't keep digging her own grave. That afternoon, my mom and dad were watching TV in the living room when their expressions suddenly changed. They enjoy watching our local channel's social news programs, which usually involve neighborhood gossip. Betty, look. My mom called to me nervously. I was also in the living room, sending a message to the insurance company to inquire about Jack's car accident settlement. Since Jack was mainly at fault, the compensation wouldn't be much. Hearing my mom's voice, I looked up to see Ruby on the TV screen. She was being interviewed by reporters, and the news headline at the bottom left read, "After son's car accident, wife refused resuscitation and ransacked the home. My son had an accident the day before yesterday. His wife was scared of spending money, refused to save him, and let him die in the hospital. Now she isn't even attending his funeral. I'm helpless, so I came to you for help." As Ruby spoke, tears ran down her face, making her look like a pitiful old lady, really drawing sympathy. "Is it because you feel guilty that you didn't come?" the reporter asked. "No," Ruby sobbed, tears practically streaming. After the accident, she wanted the house. The house was bought with my life savings under my name, and because I didn't agree to give it to her, she turned against us. She moved all the furniture and appliances out and ransacked the place. The more Ruby talked, the more she cried, truly bawling. The reporter offered some comfort, then asked, "What do you want us to help you with today?" "I want my son's wife to handle his funeral and to restore the home's furnishings and appliances." "Okay, we'll reach out to you," the reporter replied. A moment later, my phone rang. At the same time, so did my parents. Each of my parents took a call. My mom, "It's not what you think. Our Betty would never do such a thing. It's a misunderstanding." My dad, "You know what kind of person Betty is, don't you? This is Jack's family deliberately trying to slander Betty. Say one more bad word about Betty, and we won't be family anymore." Clearly, Ruby's actions had already caused a social ripple. No need to guess, my reputation was in the gutter. I felt a sting of irony. In the past life, Jack's family ruined me with debt, stripping my life bare. Do they want to wreck me again through social media this time? Laughable. She really thinks karma isn't watching? Soon enough, she'll learn what goes around comes around. So after 2 calls from the reporters, I picked up. "Hello. Hi Betty, we're from the news media team. I've seen the broadcast. I'm on my way to Jack's Memorial Hall now." With that, I hung up. Making a scene? I can play that game too. I put my phone down, packed up, and got ready to leave. "Betty, are you truly going?" My parents looked at me incredulous. Anyone could see that nothing good awaited me outside. With Ruby stirring things up, I've become the villain, surely to be shamed. "Relax, I can handle it," I reassured them. "I'll go with you. I can't let you take this alone." My dad refused to let me face it by myself. "There's TV coverage. They won't lay a hand on me. Just watch me live on the news. No need for them to worry themselves over me." My mom had high blood pressure and my dad was a hothead. In any scuffle, they might injure themselves. It wasn't worth the risk. I opened the front door. Several neighbors crowded the entrance. Seeing me, they quickly shuffled away. As they moved, the gossipy elderly women mumbled a few words. "That's the wicked woman, heartless," they say. So much for being an educated family. How'd they raise someone so ill-mannered? That's what you call, what is it, a disgrace? The anger in me flared up. My parents were too polite, letting Jack's family push them around. I didn't bother defending myself. The truth would soon come out. I hopped in a cab and headed to the venue. There were quite a few people at the hall. Yes, word traveled that a TV crew was involved, drawing not just family but curiosity seekers. As soon as I entered, the place buzzed. "Betty, you actually dared show up. How could you? If it weren't for you, Jack wouldn't be dead. Weren't you going to let Jack go without paying your respects until his mom went to the media?" Jack's relatives all clamored, spewing their accusations. In reality, Jack's family wasn't close to them. Jack's dad passed away early, and with Ruby's odd temper, Jack's relatives disliked her. Today's gathering was likely due to the TV cameras and the fact that you can't speak ill of the deceased. I noticed Jack's coffin and then saw Jack's lover Lillian, a colleague of his. Lillian noticed my stare and her eyes flickered. Right now, Lillian and Jack are still in an underground relationship. It's nothing out in the open. When they face me, they're a little sneaky, not bold like later on when they called me a hen that can't lay eggs. I've been married to Jack for 3 years and we don't have kids, but it's not because of me. It's his low sperm count, which makes it tough to get pregnant. The doctor suggested IVF, but it's expensive and Ruby wasn't keen. Plus, she somehow believes IVF babies aren't good. And the doctor said it's difficult, not impossible, so Ruby insisted we try naturally first and worry about it when we get older. Eventually, there was a pregnancy, but it wasn't me, it was Lillian. I can still vividly recall Ruby's arrogant demeanor after Lillian got pregnant, claiming her son had no issues. The more I think about it, the more ridiculous it seems. So, unable to hold back, I walked over to Lillian. Slap. Right in front of everyone, I gave her a smack. Lillian was dumbfounded. A bunch of Jack's colleagues were in the memorial hall too, shocked by what I did. "What the hell did you do that for?" Ruby stood in front of Lillian, angrily asking. Jack confides everything to his mom, so Ruby knew about his affair. In fact, she even supported it, saying it's normal for men to have women on the side and if they can get one pregnant, it's a huge accomplishment. "I did it 'cause I wanted to," I said sarcastically. "What, do I need to pick a date to smack the mistress? What nonsense are you talking?" Ruby snapped, "My son is dead, and you're still slandering him. Betty, have you no shame?" Ruby's breakdown stirred up everyone else. Betty, haven't you had enough? There are so many folks here today, can you have some decency? You came to make amends, not act all high and mighty. Have some shame. I've never seen such shamelessness. Did your dad raise you like this? Journalists from the TV station rushed over. Luckily, the media stepped in or I'd really be speechless. Miss Betty, don't you think your actions today were a bit inappropriate? Your husband just passed and instead of mourning, you're causing a scene. The reporter pushed the mic at me. Nope, don't think so, I stated bluntly. Betty, how can you be so disgraceful? My son must have been blind to choose you. He died so tragically, so tragically. Ruby cried her heart out. Everyone went to comfort her, blaming me. Lillian stood crying pitifully beside her. Is there a misunderstanding with your husband or Ruby? The reporter was calm and tried to reason. No misunderstanding, it's a fact, I said coldly. My husband Jack cheated during our marriage with her. I pointed at Lillian. You're lying, Jack and I were just colleagues, nothing more. Nothing more? Really? I sneered. Why did Jack crash his car and die then? Thanks to you. You can't just blame me for things I didn't do. Lillian protested through tears, playing the victim. But actually, she felt guilty and didn't dare go wild. Betty, I'm Jack's boss and Lillian's too. I can vouch for their innocence. Jack's direct boss stepped up. See, even the boss says they're clean, and here you are with nonsense. Ruby rushed in to defend. Stealth and deceit, the boss wouldn't know, would he? You weren't with them every second, right? I questioned the boss. The boss was at a loss, then said, regardless, you ought to have evidence before accusing. Oh, there's evidence, all right. I glanced at Lillian. Her body slightly trembled. She couldn't have imagined being exposed in public. They kept their secret well. Nobody but Ruby knew. Hadn't I lived again, I wouldn't know either. Finding out the truth later hit me like a bolt from the blue. I don't know what I did to make you think this way, Lillian cut in before I could speak. I don't want to disrupt Jack's funeral. If you don't want me here, I'll leave. With that, Lillian moved to go. I stopped her. What? Feeling guilty? I simply don't want to make things unpleasant for everyone. I'm just an insignificant nobody here. Insignificant? You who caused Jack's death. I emphasized each word clearly. Even if you're making excuses for not saving Jack, you can't slander me. Lillian blushed, retorting. I hadn't replied yet. The boss stepped in. Enough, Betty. I know Jack and Lillian's characters. No matter what you claim, I won't believe it. Then, comforting Lillian. I'll escort you out. This is Jack's phone. It has the message exchanges between Jack and Lillian. I took out Jack's phone. The moment I did, I saw Lillian's face turn pale as a ghost. To keep it fair, let's have the impartial TV reporter review what they've both said. I handed the phone to the reporter. Reporters love a juicy scoop. She eagerly took the phone and scanned through the messages. Her face visibly changed. After a few moments, she called over the cameraman. Hey, quick, capture this. Capture what? Ruby raged. Because she knew about Jack and Lillian's affair. If it got out, her son keeping a mistress would become public. I grabbed the phone just before Ruby could. Betty, give back my son's phone. Ruby demanded. So you knew about Jack's mistress, didn't you? I mocked. I what? I know nothing. The chats say differently. They show you agreed, even that you liked her, not me. I exposed her lie. I did not. You saw, right? I asked the reporter. Yes, she nodded. Ruby flushed red. She snapped, leave, get out. I don't need your help, just leave me alone. We can't leave now, things are just getting good. Why stop here, Mom? Let's showcase our family drama to the world, I taunted. Betty, you bitch. My son's dead, you want me dead too? I'll kill you. Mom, cameras are rolling. You touch me, that's assault. You'll do time. You. Ruby glared, turning to family, help me kick her out. I don't want her here. Mom, that's just too much. Afraid to commit a crime yourself, you want them to? You can't be that wicked. Any restless relatives calm down. And their annoyance at Ruby grew. I didn't mean it like that. Ruby tried to explain. I couldn't be bothered with her nonsense anymore and just came out with it. Mom, do you know how Jack died? Jack died because of you. You gave up on trying to save him, it's your fault. Ruby was still adamant that it was my fault. Jack was rushing to buy a Valentine's Day gift for Lillian when he got into the accident. He was on the phone with Lillian when it happened. If Lillian hadn't distracted him, he wouldn't have run the red light and gotten hit by a truck. What? Ruby looked at me in disbelief. Here are Jack and Lillian's last chat records, where Lillian demands a gift from Jack. He went out to buy her a gold necklace. This is Jack's last call, and the call duration matches exactly the time of his accident. I turned my phone towards Ruby to show her. Ruby's face changed dramatically after seeing the information. She turned and shot Lillian a seething glare. Lillian, caught red-handed, was mortified. Who are you to make my son buy you gifts, you homewrecker? Give me back my son. Ruby charged at Lillian, pulling her hair and causing a scene. The situation descended into chaos. No one stepped in to stop it. The TV reporters just kept filming, eager for the drama. He wanted to buy it himself. It's not like I forced him. He said he loved me and insisted on getting me a gift. What was I supposed to do? Lillian blurted in desperation. She just admitted to being the mistress. I noticed Lillian's boss standing nearby, his face ashen. This was a public embarrassment for him. Of course, Ruby was the most agitated. How dare you say something like that? My son is dead and you're still being so callous. Is it my fault your son died? If anyone's to blame, it's Betty for not saving him. Lillian tried to redirect the blame onto me. Betty, did you purposefully not save him because you found out Jack didn't love you anymore? No matter what, it's a life. How could you be so heartless? Lillian's shamelessness was off the charts. No wonder Lillian managed to win over Ruby. I've never had Ruby's approval in all these years. Apparently, after Lillian married Jack, Ruby poured out all her savings to buy a new house for them, under Jack and Lillian's names. And upon hearing what Lillian said, Ruby immediately pointed her rage at me. Betty, did you really refuse to save Jack just because he was seeing someone else? How could you be so cruel? No matter what, you shouldn't treat Jack like this. This is murder. Ruby was fuming, and it seemed like she wanted to strangle me. People around us started buzzing with gossip. Some voices said, true, even if it was like that, you shouldn't have refused to save him. It's ruthless. Others said, isn't it ironic? A husband gets into an accident buying gifts for his mistress, and the wife is supposed to save the day? Moral pressure much? The ones saying you should save are mostly the older folks. The younger ones sided more with not saving him. I calmly told Ruby, Mom, I've already told you before, it wasn't me who refused to save Jack. It was you. Jack is my only son. How could I possibly do that? At the time, the doctor said saving him might cost hundreds of thousands, and there was a high chance he could end up in a vegetative state. And you outright said you had no money. I cut her off. If you didn't have money, how could I? How could you not have money? You've been married to Jack for 3 years and have no savings? Even if you don't, couldn't you borrow some? Ruby shamelessly retorted. In these 3 years, if Jack had given me even a cent, I would have had savings. I raised my voice. And all these years, hasn't all of Jack's money gone either to you or spent on Lillian? And you're saying I could have borrowed? You had money. Why didn't you use it to save Jack? You're making things up. You're just saying nonsense. Ruby stammered, her face turning red. I have proof. I smirked. Coming back to life once I've prepared well. I slowly retrieved a document folder from my hand, pulling out bank statements. Here's Jack's bank transactions for the past 3 years. Jack's monthly salary was nearly $20,000. The first thing he did after getting paid was send money to his mom, always 60%, so every month he sent $12,000. The remaining 40%, he'd typically spend about $5,000 on Lillian and $3,000 would go towards our household, but on average not more than $1,000. The other $2,000 would be spent on himself, since he always said image mattered while working for a big company. Ruby looked at the long series of transactions, speechless. It was all there, nothing to dispute. Meanwhile, my salary wasn't much, only about $5,000 a month, but I spent it all on us. I even have monthly expense logs I kept. I wouldn't even buy myself clothes over $500, while Jack's dinner with Lillian would have cost more than that. I showed everyone my own expense records. The TV reporters were particularly enthusiastic, capturing everything. No one expected such a dramatic turn of events. So Mom, Jack's been working for 7 or 8 years now. He gives you over $10,000 a year, so you must have at least $100,000 in the bank, right? Why didn't you use that money to save Jack? Where would I have that kind of money? I paid for your and Jack's house in full when you got married. Ruby tried to evade again. But Jack and I have been married 3 years now. The house was bought 3 years ago. You've saved quite a bit since. I borrowed money from relatives to buy the house back then, don't I have to pay them back? Ruby stubbornly argued. Is that so? I sneered. Well, all the relatives are here today. Can anyone tell me who lent my mom money for that house? All the relatives looked at each other. No one said a word. Ruby started to panic. She probably never imagined that the person she thought she had under control would one day put her on the spot like this. Yes, I admit I still have some savings. Ruby confessed but continued to deny the rest, insisting she never refused to pay for Jack's treatment. Jack is my only son, why would I refuse to save him? Betty, why are you accusing me? I knew you'd be this shameless. I remarked sharply, which is why I went to the hospital and got a copy of the video from the day you spoke to the doctor. Ruby went pale. I didn't give her the chance to deny it further and played the video on my phone. Ruby's shrill voice played. What? The treatment will cost tens of thousands and might not even work? He could end up a vegetable. You might want to think it over. I can't really advise beyond telling you the worst-case scenario. The doctor responded helplessly. Well, I don't have money, Ruby replied bluntly. I'm not working, and I only get 1 or 2 thousand in pension a month. How would I have the money? Betty, you're his wife. You make the decision. The video sent a shockwave through everyone present. 5 days. What kind of person is this? Her own son is dying, and all she cares about is her money. The key point is she already has the money her son earned. She's just trying to dump all the responsibility onto her son's wife, right? She's got it all figured out. If her son doesn't make it, the loan is all on the daughter-in-law, and she has to pay it back herself. Talk about trying to take advantage of everything. Serves her right for getting what she deserves. How does a person like that have the nerve to go on TV and expose her daughter-in-law? Seriously, has she no shame at all? Ruby was being mocked mercilessly by those around us. Her face went red and white, and she couldn't even get a word out for the longest time. Seeing her like this was really satisfying. But I wasn't satisfied yet. Everything I went through in the past life was far worse than this. I calmly continued. Ruby came here today to accuse me on TV, claiming that I took things from the house and ruined the renovations. I'm here to set the record straight.
I admit, I'm unbalanced.
Why does Jack get to have affairs? And why is Ruby still supporting him? Now that Jack's dead, I can't confront him, nor do I want to argue with Ruby. I just want to take back what's mine and sever ties with this family. What's mine, you ask? When we got married, all the appliances in the house were gifts from my parents. The renovations were funded by them too. But the house, it's in Ruby's name, not mine, so all I could do was take my things. And let me just say, Ruby mentioned she bought the house outright. So when I married Jack, there was no dowry. Most of the people here can vouch for this, right? Ruby was bragging everywhere back then about how her son didn't spend a penny to get married, and the bride's family even brought a lot of things along. A relative immediately chimed in. I can vouch for that. Back then, she bragged everywhere about how her son didn't have to spend anything to get a wife, and the girl's family brought gifts. She even mocked me because my son spent tens of thousands to get married. I almost had a fight with my son over it. But now it seems, thank goodness I wasn't swayed by her. Thank goodness I felt bad for the bride for having been raised by her parents and gave the dowry we promised. Otherwise, who knows, that karma might have hit us instead. Heaven punished her by taking her son away. Ruby was furious when the relative spoke. What the hell are you saying? She was about to hit the relative when her husband pushed her away hard. Ruby staggered back several steps. Her husband coldly threatened. You lay a finger on her and I'll kill you. You. Ruby was shocked. Your son's death is because of you. Not just your son, your husband too. People like you end up with nobody even willing to attend your funeral. The relative's husband spat out harshly. You. Ruby was so furious she was jumping up and down, losing it completely, howling with tears. You're all bullying me, an old lady. You'll all meet bad ends. She cried and cursed like a shrew. Everyone around just watched her make a fool of herself. No one had an ounce of sympathy left. Truly revolting. And there's one more thing to clear up. Ignoring Ruby, I said, Jack and I don't have kids because of Jack's infertility. It's got nothing to do with me. Here's the doctor's proof. I took it out. Enough, Betty, enough. Are you trying to prevent Jack from resting in peace? Ruby screamed at me like a madwoman. Yeah. Does someone like him deserve to rest in peace? I was going to do IVF, but Ruby said it was too costly and insisted we try naturally. And Jack died before we even conceived. Once I said this, people started buzzing again. She deserved it. Really, being so money obsessed, her son died and didn't even leave a child. That's what you call karma. Heaven has justice after all, and people like this don't deserve sympathy. Ruby was more collapsed than ever, screaming at everyone. Shut up. All of you, shut up. No one paid her any mind. Neither did I. I continued calmly. I'm not here to attend Jack's funeral, especially since Jack died for Lillian. I'm not an angel and I'm not that forgiving. But I'm not here just to clear things up about myself either. There are accounts to settle. I looked at Ruby and Lillian, speaking coldly. Don't blame me for hashing this out now. I plan to settle this after Jack's funeral, but since you're so anxious, I won't waste time. Before Ruby and Lillian could say anything, others started to stir things up. Settle it. Let's settle it. We support you. Betty, we misunderstood you before. Say whatever you need to now. While everyone's here, we'll make sure you get justice. We can't let these two bully you. Speak up, we've got your back. A reporter approached, excitedly telling me, we're broadcasting live on TV and online. There's a huge buzz. Everyone supports you. They want you to get the justice you deserve, and our station will back you. If you need legal help, we can arrange for it right away. I need it. Didn't hesitate for a moment. Wait just a moment. The reporter went to contact a lawyer. I knew with the TV station involved, I wouldn't be at a loss. Ruby was panicking. Get out. If you want to cut ties with Jack, just leave. Chill, I'll leave once we settle everything. I don't have any accounts with you. As for the stuff you broke at home, I'll just chalk it up to bad luck and won't hold it against you, suddenly Ruby said generously. I didn't even need to retort. Someone else jumped in. How shameless can you be? Betty said herself. Her parents paid for the renovation. Of course she had the right to trash it. I let her live in my house for free all these years. Ruby replied. Betty married your son without asking for a dowry, and even added stuff to the marriage. You not only didn't buy a house but also have the audacity to say you let her live rent-free? I've never seen such shamelessness in my life. More and more people started mocking Ruby. Ruby couldn't take it. Our family matters are none of your business. We don't care about family matters, but we're sure as hell stepping in for Betty. Everyone was standing up for me. I expected Ruby and Lillian to end up losing face and in a mess, but I certainly didn't expect so many people to suddenly support me. In my previous life, I was lonely and helpless. People around me either called me stupid or asked me to pay them back. It wasn't my fault, but during that time, I faced the world's greatest hostility. So when I jumped to my death, I really had no regrets. Right now, I'm so moved by the support from so many people. My eyes are really red and my nose feels stuffy. I'm trying hard to keep my emotions in check. Luckily, the TV station's lawyer arrived quickly. I calmed down and announced in front of everyone. I've been married to Jack for 3 years. According to marriage law, the money we earn after marriage is joint marital property. As everyone just saw, during these 3 years of marriage, Jack gave most of our money to his mom and his lover. I turned to the lawyer and asked, can I get this money back? The lawyer answered, according to the marriage law, any income earned during the marriage belongs to both spouses. If one partner gives away money to others without the other's knowledge, the wronged spouse can demand it back, provided they have proof. I do. I quickly showed Jack's transfer records, a detailed account of all the money he gave them over the past 3 years. The lawyer examined it closely and nodded, saying, this can be used as valid evidence to demand repayment. All right then. I looked at Ruby and said, round it up, Jack sent you $430,000. Please have all that money returned to me soon. You must be kidding. My son's money is mine. Who are you to take my son's money? Are you crazy for money? She retorted. The law states that once a couple is married, the property is jointly owned, the lawyer explained. Who cares about the law? I gave birth to my son, whether he's married or not, everything he has is mine. Ruby snapped back. The lawyer wanted to say more. No need to argue with her. I know Ruby and her unreasonable ways. Can I just file a lawsuit? I asked. Of course you can. That includes the $120,000 Jack gave to his lover Lillian? I asked the lawyer. Yes, the lawyer confirmed. Great. I turned to Ruby and Lillian and said, within 3 days, if the money isn't in my account, we'll meet in court. You wretched woman, Betty, you dare sue me? You think your lawsuit scares me? Ruby shouted furiously. Lillian, no longer calm, chimed in, that money was just what Jack wanted to give me. Why should I return it? Because of the fairness and justice of the law. I replied firmly. Lillian was speechless, her face turning bright red with anger. I'll say it once more. You have 3 days. Otherwise, we'll see each other in court. With that, I turned and left. I didn't want to waste more time on these two. Betty, if they don't return the money, I'll be there to support you in court, shouted a relative. Other relatives echoed the support. Yes, just let us know, we'll all be there. I want to see how arrogant these two are in front of the law. Thank you all so much. I was really touched by their kindness. Going through something once makes you realize how wonderful people's goodwill can be. Leaving the memorial hall, a reporter stopped me. Betty, our TV station can provide you with free legal assistance. If you decide to go to court, please contact us. Sure. I'll definitely reach out if I need to sue. I knew nothing in life is exactly free, and the station probably wanted to keep the news covered. But hey, it doesn't really hurt me and could expose some ugly truths, so why not? Back home, as soon as I stepped out of the elevator, I saw a few elderly people who once slandered me standing at my door. Hey Betty, we misunderstood you before. We didn't know you suffered this much. Don't take it to heart, said one old lady, trying to be nice. We were all fooled by that awful Ruby. Who knew she could be so shameless? Here's some fruit we got for you. Consider it an apology. They handed over a big bag of fruit and quickly left, still saying, Betty, we're all here to support you. I never actually blamed them. Most people are swayed by public opinion. The only two I hated were Ruby and Lillian. I opened the door. My parents were waiting inside, clearly emotional when they saw me. They probably watched the live broadcast, feeling both angry and heartbroken. Betty, I never imagined you suffered so much over there, Mom said, hugging me and bursting into tears. Dad's eyes were also red. It's all okay now, right? I reassured them. My daughter has always been smart and capable, Dad said, though he's not one to easily throw out compliments. Otherwise, we'd have suffered even more under Jack's mom. Just thinking about that gets me so worked up. Hearing this made me uncomfortable. In my past life, that family pushed me to suicide, and I couldn't even bear to imagine how my death affected my parents. Thank goodness none of that happened this time. 3 days later, Ruby and Lillian didn't return the money. I didn't bother reminding them. I just contacted the TV station and prepared for court. 2 months later, the lawsuit against Ruby and Lillian went to trial. Seeing them in court surprised me a bit. Both looked noticeably worn down. Ruby, who was overweight, had lost at least 20 pounds and looked totally different. Lillian also looked rough. She used to be all about style, but today with no makeup, her skin looked yellowish and she seemed exhausted, lacking any of the charm she once had. I smirked a little. Honestly, I shouldn't be surprised. Being targeted by internet trolls and judged by people is a nightmare I know too well. Many relatives and friends were at the court to support me, and many people online were waiting for good news. In court, my lawyer argued my case. In the end, the court ordered Lillian to fully return the $121,651 Jack spent on her, and let Ruby keep 20% as aid, meaning she had to return $342,162 to me. But since Jack had passed away and Ruby was entitled to inherit some property, all costs including the final insurance payout were split. I got half as the spouse and Ruby and I split the remainder. So, Ruby ended up owing me $216,708. Leaving the courtroom, I felt relieved. Everything from my past life was finally over, at least for me. Jack's gone. I got back every cent I was owed, and I restored my reputation. Now I can live the rest of my life with dignity and chase after my own happiness again. As for Ruby and Lillian, their karma is just beginning. Everywhere Ruby goes, people point and gossip. The real kicker is her son died, and he was her only kid. After her reputation took a hit, not a single relative sympathized with her. She's all alone. Even though she still has some money and a house, her quality of life isn't much to speak of. Later, I heard she got scammed by those selling beauty products. Those sales guys sweet-talked her, calling her mom and made her feel special. Ruby ended up blowing all her cash on those products. No relatives stepped in to help. They just said she deserved to be scammed. When her money was all gone, the sellers disappeared. Ruby figured out too late that she'd been conned. She made a scene on the street, and folks just thought she was nuts. When she went to the police, they just logged it and moved on since so many elderly folks get scammed. Chances are that money's gone for good. After that, it seems Ruby developed some mental issues. She'd be out looking for her son and even made up a grandson, spending her days acting bizarrely at home. Neighbors couldn't take it anymore and called the cops. Ruby got sent to a mental hospital, and that's the last anyone heard of her. As for Lillian, she's not doing any better. She got fired due to her personal problems, and people whisper about her when she goes out. Some extreme folks even sent her threats and creepy toys.